Good morning, everyone. My name is Jumoke Akintaylor, and I'm the hearing officer for San Francisco Public Works. Cherise Waiters is the clerk for this hearing, and this hearing, as you know, is being recorded. So we're here to consider this different order numbers, and we'll start with order number 206854, which is to consider removal of one significant tree with replacement on the property at 3271 20th Street. And the second order number is 206855 to consider removal of one street tree, and the address is at 600 Alvarado Street, and it is the removal of one tree and one significant tree. Well, we'll talk about that when we get to that. The third order number is 206856 to consider the removal of 8 street trees with replacement, and removal without replacement of 4 significant trees on private property with payment of in lieu fee at 2550 Ivan Street. The fourth order number is order number 206858, and this is to consider the removal of one street tree with replacement at 55 Francisco Street. And the last order number is 206859, and this is to consider the removal of one street tree with replacement at 2155-2157 Jackson Street. So my job as the hearing officer is really to gather the facts for the hearing items that I just listed. And I'll listen to your testimonies. And after that, I would help our Director of Public Works make a determination. I will not be making any decisions today, but every information that I get from you, I will forward as findings and make a recommendation to the director. The director makes the final determination. Once the director's determinations are made, the department will notify you of them. So if you want to be notified, you can send your contact information in the chat to Cherise. And so the way that this would go, I would ask the public works staff to speak first and present the case. Then I will ask any participant that is interested in that order number to speak. Each speaker will have 3 minutes, and the clerk will monitor the time for all speakers. When you hear the first bell, it means the speaker has 30 seconds left to speak. A second louder bell signifies that the time is up. Comments and questions should be addressed to me and not the department or the applicant. And if you cannot finish your comments within the allotted time, you could submit a written testimony to me at the end of this hearing. If I feel a question is warranted, I will ask the question. Once all comments are completed, I will close that item. So let us now begin with the first agenda item, which is agenda item 206854, hearing order 206854. This is for to consider the removal of one significant tree without replacement at 3271 20th Street. Public Works staff.
Good morning. I'm going to share my screen.
Ms. Taylor, prior to the staff's presentation, do we want to ask for item number 2 to be considered? Item 2 on the agenda is for any items that need to be recognized in the recording that are not relative to this case.
Oh, thank you. So public comments. This is item number 2. I did not have that on my scripts. Can you repeat that, Cherise, just so everyone hears? I think I missed.
Yes, item number 2 is for public comment. If there's anything that anyone would like to state that you want to be in the record, now is the time to raise your hand and you can bring that up. But it's for things that are something that is not related to the cases that are on for today.
Thank you. So anything outside the hearing orders that I just stated, this is the time to bring it up. Any public comments?
And I don't see any hands.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
So we'll
you.
move to that hearing order. Thank you, Sharice.
You're welcome.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, that was something we used to do before we did remote, and then we went to remote and we kind of stopped doing the,
Yeah.
and then we did start doing it again. So my name's Susan Alberry. I'm the Urban Forestry Inspector for the Bureau of Urban Forestry, and I'm representing the Bureau today. And we usually just lay out our number one goal for public works, which is ensure safe, clean, and green infrastructure in public right of way. So it's a challenge to balance all these things. We want things to be safe and clean, but we also want green infrastructure. And I want to emphasize that green infrastructure is as important as fixed infrastructure. So our mission is to grow the urban forest. Again, we're trying to balance safety and the needs of a growing and evolving city. And it's challenging, but we are in a climate emergency. We have X number of years to turn the ship around. So we are constantly trying to balance the need for safety, the need for new, better, faster infrastructure that's more efficient and useful for the public, while still trying to preserve canopy and keep our climate healthy. And a removal permit is required to remove street and significant trees, so we'll see both here. We did update our urban forestry ordinance in 2022, so this will play into the hearing officer recommendations. If we are removing a tree, the Bureau of Urban Forestry, so not a tree removal application. So if there's an internal removal, a replacement is required within 120 days, or must be tracked on a delayed replacement report. So there's no such thing as like the tree can't be replaced. We have to find a new location for that tree if it is a Bureau related removal. If an owner, property owner applicant is granted a removal permit, then we shall require a replacement tree or equivalent value of one removed. That has not changed. That's always been the case. If for some reason they're removing a tree not related to construction, there's no room for a replacement tree, they're not subject to the plant being replaced in a nearby location. So that graphic is not working, but the graphic does kind of discuss how street tree SF. I'm not sure why that's not working, but it's probably my screen share. But basically, like we're pruning trees systematically. We are on like a 5 to 7 year rotation for tree pruning. So a lot of people just don't feel patient enough to deal with this maintenance cycle and just want to remove the trees. We hear that there are infrastructure issues, there's conflicts with street trees, but we really just can't remove every tree once people get sick of them, because we have to preserve and maintain our canopy. San Francisco has the lowest tree canopy of any major municipal city. It's somewhere hovering around 11%. New York is up around 30%. LA is up around 25%, and Washington DC is also up around 30 to 35% tree canopy cover. So we're pretty far behind most other developed cities in retaining, maintaining, and keeping our tree canopy cover. And you can see the effects of that in not necessarily the heart of the city where the more well-advantaged neighborhoods are, but in the eastern parts of the city. That's where you really start to see the effects. Okay, so with that little intro, we'll just go into the first case. And it's Public Works Order 206854, 3271 20th Street, the removal of one significant tree without replacement at the property at 3271 20th. And staff denied the removal and the applicant appealed. So it's a significant tree. It's not a street tree. So A significant tree is a tree that's within 10 feet of the public right of way, but not in the public right of way. And it must be 20 feet in height, or 12 inches in diameter, or 15 feet in canopy spread. It only needs to be one of those three things to be significant, and also be within 10 feet of the right of way. So the city protects significant trees, but we don't maintain them because they are on private property, and Public Works cannot maintain anything on private property. So this meets the significant tree criteria. It's over 35 feet tall. It's also over 12 inches. Well, it's over 12 inches in diameter. The spread is only 12 feet. It is in good condition. You can see that the fronds on top are very green and healthy. They don't have like dieback. They're just dead fronds on the bottom. That's very normal for Washingtonia robusta. If you don't prune these, they actually create a skirt that goes all the way down, and that's for sun protection in the desert where they're normally from. So our colleague did an assessment, and the only recommendation was really to prune in terms of the health and structure of the tree. And the applicant wants to repair this retaining wall. And the thing is about palm trees is they don't put out woody roots. Their roots are very much like a grass. So if you pull them up, it's like spaghetti. So they don't put on big woody structural roots. They just stay structurally sound with just this massive roots. And so because you're not really cutting large roots, the inspector believes that this tree would be stable with the removal and replacement of this retaining wall. And so the basis for denial was that the repairs could be made without necessitating the removal of the tree, because the wall should be able to be repaired without removing the tree. And so he didn't really see evidence that that couldn't happen. And then one other thing, yeah, it's rated as moderate, the root system, because you do see a few roots on top. Just a little bit of opening. You can see it looks like there's some bricks going all the way up to the base. If you were to just remove the inner bricks, not the outer bricks, that would help. And then backfilling the soil usually helps with the roots kind of showing up over the soil there. And these are low voltage lines. So once the palm grows up and over them, it won't cause any more strain and abrasion. PG&E has this order called General Order 95, Rule 35. It's written by the California PUC and then National Energy Regulatory Commission. Also regulates PG&E lines, high voltage lines, and these are not high voltage. High voltage lines need 18 inches of clearance. These are not high voltage. For secondary lines, you just have to prune to reduce strain and abrasion. They can touch trees. So that's a major misconception with secondary lines. And then some of these are Comcast or internet, some kind of internet or phone as well. So once the palm, you remove the dead fronds and the palm grows above, you're not really going to have strain and abrasion issues. And then there's not going to be any cross phasing, which is when a frond lands across multiple high voltage lines, because these aren't high voltage. One other thing is the applicant submitted some information that I should have included in this PowerPoint, but they did point out that their sewer is underneath and their water line is underneath the tree. The reason we didn't consider that as a criteria for removal is because you actually have to have damage that you're trying to repair actively. So if you need to actively, like now, trench and remove that line, the water or the sewer, then that's a different story. But there's not really evidence there's damage occurring that needs immediate repair. And so there's not really also evidence that a tree just being on top of that line will cause damage in the future. There are, the concrete that they're under supports the weight of cars, and people often have sewers in their driveway that they drive over, and that's like a 2,000-pound car. So we don't really think that the weight of this palm is going to be pushing down. If you saw that, you'd actually see the palm sinking. So we don't really think that that's a real issue, weight above the lines. Also, palms don't send roots more than really 36 to 18 inches above the soil. Most trees don't. So they don't send their roots down. There's not enough oxygen. They need loose soil in the top 18 to 36 inches. So they're not going to go down below where there's oxygen to intrude upon the sewer. If a major leak occurred in the sewer, it would probably be caused because the sewer is old and might attract some roots, but we're not really going to see root intrusion until the sewer really degrades on its own. So that's why we didn't really consider the utilities a criteria for removal. For us, our real criteria for removal to assess was the wall, and our inspector determined that based on the root structure of palms, because they're not real trees, they're grasses, that this wall could be repaired without necessitating the removal of the tree. And that's why we denied the removal of one significant tree. And we noted that it's without replacement because it cannot be replaced because it's on top of utilities. And while we don't remove trees for the fact that they're near utilities, we also don't put them back on top of utilities. And that concludes our presentation for 3271 20th Street.
Thank you. Do we have the appellant for this order number? 3271 20th Street? Is that it was appealed? Okay, so we have Windsor Owens. Sheriff, can you unmute them or promote them?
Hi. Hi, my name's Windsor Owens. Can you all hear me?
Yes. we can hear you.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks for allowing me to speak today. Is it possible for me to share the slides I sent in regarding this case? Or if you all have the
Yes,
deck.
either I can share it or I can promote you and you can share it. I do have it ready.
Okay, yeah, if you want to share it, that's fine. That would be
Okay.
great. Thank
Okay.
you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Sharice.
You're welcome. Oops, sorry.
Fantastic.
Are you able to see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay, so you talk and I'll change pages
you'll
as you tell me.
change slides. Wonderful,
Yes.
thanks.
Okay,
And if
we'll
I-
have 3 minutes. Uh-huh.
Okay, great. The next slide, please. I just wanted to give a little background for myself and my wife, Sally Daniels. We're the owners of the property. We moved in about 20 years ago, and we have always seen a big deficiency in our property because there was no trees in front of the property at all when we first moved in here. The image in the upper right was taken in 1974, but when we moved in 2002, it looked like that as well. There was no significant tree, no street tree. So it was wasn't beautiful. And we want to make our place more beautiful. So my wife is the gardener, not me. She can't be here today. She's preparing for surgery, unfortunately. But she really wanted to free the earth and get rid of the concrete and start getting some gardens going. So she's done that in the front of the house and the back of the house as well. And I want to take a few moments to talk about the street trees that we put in. We put in, go back to the first slide, please. We put in 3 street trees so far. In 2009, we put a queen palm in, planted with Friends of the Urban Forest. In 2010, and there's a picture of that in the 2009 image there. In 2010, the city told us we had to take it out because it wasn't an approved type of tree. So we replaced it with our Victorian boxwood #1 in 2010. And as soon as we put boxwood #1 in, the city said, oh, you can keep the queen palm tree, but we had already replaced it for the city's requirements. And unfortunately, Victorian boxwood #1 was very skinny. The trunk was about the size of my pinky, and it never survived and never thrived. So then in late in 2010, we replaced Victorian boxwood #1 with Victorian boxwood #2. And that's much healthier tree. You can see a picture of that in 2013 and grown in 2022, earlier this year. It's much healthier, needs lots of water and food, but it's thriving. And then in 2011, it got hit by a car. In 2020, a car broke the tree stakes, and now we're putting in a tree guard for that street tree. So we want to green the front of our house, and we have been doing that since we moved in. The purpose of today's discussion is on the significant tree. And Cerise, if you could move to the next slide, thank you. In 2004, we planted the Washingtonia palm tree in our front yard. It's grown to be designated a significant tree, as mentioned earlier. I guess I was just wondering, back in the Prop E in 2017, it sounds like the city is liable for damage due to street trees if the damage occurred after 2017.
30
Is that
seconds.
the case? Okay, thanks. I guess I can follow up on this point afterwards. There was no significant tree there previously. We made a mistake planting the tree in this location. It's directly above the main water and sewer lines. We did not know that. We planted it. That was a bad location. Tree is damaging our neighbor's property, and there's risk of the sewer lines. If you could go to the final slide, we can see some pictures of that. Thanks. 2014, there was no crack to the wall. 2017, the crack is growing. 2022, the crack is about 3 inches. The sidewalk is also cracking, which is a issue for the city because I think they maintain sidewalks. So it's also over water and sewer lines.
Okay, that's your time.
Thank you.
Ms. Kane Taylor, did you have questions for him?
No, I do not have questions. Thank you for sharing the slides. And I mean, I did look over it, and I'll make my recommendations based on this and what I've heard so far.
May I answer the question in the PowerPoint? Sorry, this is
yes, go ahead, Susan.
The Bureau of Urban Forestry is not responsible for significant trees because they are on private property. So regardless of street tree SF, we would not maintain any damage caused by a significant tree, whether it's before or after 2017.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Susan. Do we have any public comments on this order, order number? Sharice, do you see any hands up? Oh, no, I don't see
Yes,
any.
we have a couple of hands.
Okay.
We have Josh, go ahead. You should be able to speak.
Okay.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Yeah, just briefly, I want to first of all thank the homeowners here for the work that they've done over the years with the sidewalk garden and with the FUF planting and with the palm tree that we're talking about today. Regarding the retaining wall, I think the department addressed that in terms of, this is not your, oh, for God's sake, this is not your, sorry about that, your typical woody root tree. Regarding the water line, I would agree that there's no actual damage. Just the fact of the tree being there isn't a reason to take it out. I would just note that I recently took out 3 small sidewalk pavers just to put in a garden in front of my own place, and each one of those pavers was nearly 400 pounds. So if you've got a water line that goes underneath your sidewalk alone, it's already daily experiencing about half a ton of weight bearing down on it, not to mention, as the department said, driveways and cars. So if we're gonna take out trees just because there's a line, then that's gonna be a lot of trees that we're gonna be taking out, and we might as well just take out all the concrete and vehicles because those are actually a lot worse than a lot of these trees. And then I think that, as somebody who has been a volunteer planting leader with Friends of the Urban Forest for over a dozen years, I know firsthand how hard it is for a street tree to establish. And I think the homeowner kind of went through that, talking about how the Victorian box has been hit by cars and its stakes hit and stuff like that. I think it's all the more reason why, when you've got a tree that's further away from the street, that is healthy and is in a protected place, that's even more of a reason that it ought to be preserved. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have John Nolte. Mr. Nolte, you should be able to speak.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I want to also apply the property owner for planting him and his wife 3 trees in front of his property, and 2 are still there. My only issues I've seen, what I see right now during the presentation, is that the root system around the bottom of the palm tree needs to be breathing, so therefore those bricks have to come up. And I would suggest, since the retaining wall is going to be removed for that was the purpose, the retaining wall to be fixed, that also the bricks around the bottom of the palm tree be also taken out, because the palm tree needs nutrients, it needs water, it needs, so those bricks should be coming out, because otherwise the bricks end up being stuck to the trunk of the palm tree. So, but other than that, the utilities seem to be fine. It's been well established. It's healthy. It's flourishing. It's helping the neighborhood. So I see nothing wrong with the tree. So the tree should remain, and just the repairs done as per Buff. And I also stand with Buff's ruling on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think I see, are those the 2 hands that are up in the attendees, or do we have 2 more hands up?
We have 2. Well, we have 1 more hand up for Deborah Murphy.
Okay,
The other hand is the property owner who spoke earlier.
okay.
So I'll lower his hand. Deborah Murphy, you should be able to speak.
Yes, I want to speak in support of this homeowner. He clearly values tree canopy cover. And my feeling is, if you don't let him remove this tree, it's going to be a deterrent for other people to plant trees on their property. So he's done, if all homeowners were like him, the city would be a better place. And I feel we should respect his wishes because it's on his private property.
Thank
And that's
you.
all I have to say.
Thank you so much. Any other hands, any other public comments? Okay.
No other public
Okay.
comments at this
So
time.
that order number 3206-854 is now closed. We would move to the next one, which is 206-855. And this is to consider removal of 1 street tree and 1 significant tree on the property at 600 Alvarado Street. Susan, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, so 600 Alvarado Street, this is the removal of 1 street tree adjacent to 600 Alvarado Street, and 1 significant tree adjacent to 600 Alvarado, and both are replaceable. Staff denied the removals and the applicants appealed. So 1 is a street tree that we maintain, and 1 is a significant tree that the property owner maintained. Let's see. So this is the street tree. It's a 60-inch diameter tree, so it's quite large. It's about 70 feet, and we do say, like, there are some deficiencies where there's multiple stems with basal wound and a little bit of decay. However, this sort of multiple stem structure is very typical for Monterey cypress. And they usually put on reaction wood to kind of counteract this growth. And so although there is some presence of decay, the likelihood of failure doesn't really cross the threshold for us to remove. We received an arborist report saying that the likelihood of failure was moderate, and it was possible, but not probable. And so we really don't, that's just not high enough of a risk rating. And I apologize, I should have actually brought our tree risk assessment risk rating, but it's basically like impossible, improbable, probable, possible, and imminent. And so that's kind of on the low, medium risk rating. And really, we don't really see the little decay pocket, which I'll show a photo of. We don't really see failures related to that. The more common failure mode for cypress is limb failure. And both of these have actually been really well maintained because actually thanks to the property owner, we didn't maintain these trees until, actually we don't maintain the significant tree, but we didn't maintain the street tree until 2017. But because it's been so well maintained over its like lifespan, it really just doesn't have like the long-term systematic issues. So we have to retain as many old trees as possible. As I mentioned, we have a canopy cover of less than 11%. I actually need to check if there's an updated percentage there. And some of our tree advocates might actually know what that is because they've been attending a lot of our hearings. But essentially, we're losing large stature trees and canopy cover like nobody's business very fast. And we always have people say like, well, I don't want this tree. I like trees, but not this tree. But we have applicant after applicant after applicant saying that. And so if we granted every applicant's wishes to be consistent, we would just have no large street trees. So let's see. The tree in the foreground is the street tree. It's the larger one. It's been pretty well maintained. Again, you know, mostly I would say in part due to the property owner until 2017. We did have a contract come by in 2018, 2019 to do the maintenance. So it does have some clearance from the building here. It does have that union there in the middle where there's two large stems. But as you can see, there's not very much canopy on it's not super heavy and end weighted. So we're not really going to see this lever arm. So what usually causes major failures is when you have limbed up trees with very large amounts of canopy at the very end, and it causes kind of a lever arm. So you don't want to see end weighted trees. This tree is, you know, it's pretty good. Could you have more interior canopy, but you know, honestly, mature trees just tend to lose their interior canopy over time. So this is a very typical structure. Many people would say that there's alarm, you know, that's cause for alarm, but it's typical structure of Monterey cypress. This tree's been well maintained, so I don't really anticipate failure here. So there's the base of the tree. Again, this is the street tree. It's kind of confusing because it's farther back. I kept thinking this is the significant tree, but it's the street tree, it's ours. So this is a city asset. It belongs to the city, belongs to the residents of the city of San Francisco, belongs to everybody on the block. And I know that the property owners are the ones that really bear the brunt of like having the tree in front of their property, but anybody who has a street tree in front of their house, you know, kind of shares the load here. So this is that little decay pocket we're talking about. Our inspector sounded the base of the tree. He didn't find that the base of the tree was hollow, and often a decay pocket at the base is cause for concern, but we don't see like root plate lifting here, and we also don't. So a lot of times there can be a hollow stem, and the updated tree risk assessment kind of indicates that that's not necessarily risk of failure. So a lot of people think, oh my gosh, the tree is hollow. Like that's not always a bad thing. All of the work to keep the tree upright is on the outside of the tree. It's called compression wood. And the tree kind of pushes itself, the wood kind of pushes the tree up against gravity. So yeah, there is a little decay pocket, but most trees are going to have some kind of imperfection or decay. So we're not really concerned here about this particular little pocket for this street tree. And our bureau recently did a sidewalk repair here. It's been very tough to get them to get out and do sidewalk repairs. We only have 6 cement masons for 125,000 street trees and 30,000 deferred repair requests because we only received the maintenance of street trees in 2017. But I was pleased to see that they did this repair. So, you know, in this case, there's not like much maintenance that needs to be done here. The city would continue to provide emergency response. We are responsible for this street tree. Therefore, if something happened, damage happened, and injury happened, the claim would go to the city of San Francisco. So our arborist looked at the report and had comments for each concern in the report. And despite existing decay, overall risk rating is low in his assessment. So we kind of calculate risk by the consequence and the impact. So it just doesn't meet our threshold to approve removal. There is some cabling. Actually, don't know if that was visible here. There we go. So it might be tough to see, but in between the two larger stems, the tree was once cabled. Again, thanks to the property owners, we do appreciate the stewardship they put into this tree. So this has been cabled, and that reduces the likelihood that the stem will split and fail. We have talked about cabling city street trees, but we don't really have the staffing for that. So I know that the property owners are probably tired of maintaining this tree, which kind of caused the impetus for this tree removal application. But you know, additional cabling would further decrease the risk of impact. But again, like we also don't think that it's a super high risk. So that would be really optional for them if they really just didn't feel comfortable with the tree. But I actually don't think it needs that much more work. We'll definitely monitor the tree. They're welcome to contact any one of us at any time, 311, our inbox at urbanforestry@sfdpw.org, or the inspector himself. If he's not available, one of us will go look at the tree. And then this is the significant tree. So this is a tree that the property owners own and maintain. So this is their tree, their responsibility. We can't prune it. We can't do the sidewalk. We're not allowed to as public works. We're not allowed to use public goods to maintain private assets. But back in 2006, the Board of Supervisors decided that trees within 10 feet of the sidewalk are city streetscape assets and they impact the public. In fact, the majority of trees are on private property. And so while we do agree that like sometimes there's a lot of overstep with private property, at the same time, like we all have to do our part because again, we are in a climate emergency. And removing trees on private property is a really huge reason why we have no tree canopy. So that's why we have the significant tree ordinance. And if your tree doesn't fall under the significant tree ordinance, we still urge you to like be a steward of the urban forest and help try to stop the ship from crashing, you know, in terms of climate change, because it really is a serious issue. So this tree has some basal wounds. I think they're a little more significant than this street tree. And again, the inspector found the same thing. It's not really significant in relation to the whole root system. He didn't find that there was like any root plate lifting, that there was decay at the like more sort of the root flare, which is where you see the tree sort of support itself. Again, like this tree, I think it's well maintained. I would probably stop pruning the interior because again, that pushes the canopy to the end weight and focus more on end weight reduction. And again, we're trying to balance our management of mature old trees within our urban forests, and I totally agree it's a challenge. But again, this tree just doesn't meet our criteria for removal either. I mean, I do think our risk tolerance for street trees is a lot higher because we have the infrastructure to maintain them. I understand that this is a private property tree, but if you really look at it, it really is part of the streetscape, and we are losing trees on private property rapidly. It's one of the biggest causes of deforestation. People removing trees inside their private property, and most trees are in private property. So we have 125,000 street trees, but we have hundreds and hundreds of thousands more on private property, and we're losing them rapidly. So this is another photo I took of the tree, just to show you how it kind of impacts the streetscape. It is shorter than its neighbor here, and I think it had pretty good structure for a cypress. And there it is again. It is a little closer to the property here. They both have really wide basins, which worked out well. You can see that there was some sidewalk damage up the hill from the street tree that we repaired. But because of these large basins, the trees have done really well. And here's the structure. This is, again, very typical of Monterey cypress, and we're not really concerned. I do see a couple of tighter unions where the trunks are growing really close together. I think, again, and weight reduction helps reduce the likelihood of failure there, but Monterey cypress grow like this naturally, and they put on what's called compression wood, again, to combat sort of the failure risks here. And you can see that there is reaction wood where those unions are on the outside, there's some sort of swelling. That's a reaction wood that the tree has put on to kind of counteract the included bark. Again, that's the decay pocket. It is larger than the other tree, but our inspector found that the whole base of the tree wasn't decayed. And so this doesn't really indicate that there will be a whole tree failure. And again, that's not very common with cypress, even with a little decay pocket. That's probably more, that probably more stems from the top of the tree where the decay is probably entered from the top. But we don't think that's going to cause the whole tree to fail. Because again, as I mentioned, a hollow tree isn't necessarily a tree that's going to fail. That's why we denied this tree removal. It wasn't as straightforward. So thanks for bearing with me while I explain why we denied both trees for removal. We know that it takes a lot for property owners to maintain these trees, but we're tasked with protecting the urban forests and mature canopy. So to be consistent, we denied the removal of both the street and significant trees for removal. And again, this is our inspector who wanted to address the concerns of the arborist report. So he did read the report. We did make an assessment based on their findings, and yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to get clarification. If you could go back to the other slide, the one just before this. So
this one?
No, the one you were on before.
Oh, this one.
No, just keep going. The one that had the table with the comments. So this is staff comment. Agree failure could cause significant. No. The one. Agree failure could cause significant consequences. Likelihood of failure will impact is not probable.
Oh, yeah. So that means, like, if a failure were to occur, like, it could be significant because it could hit a car, it could hit a person. But the consequence of a failure doesn't necessarily dictate us removing. The likelihood of the failure dictates us removing. Okay. So yeah, like a car could veer off the road and kill you, but what's the likelihood of that? Okay. So that's how we kind of determine risk as failure. Okay.
So the likelihood of failure is not probable.
Correct.
And you've done that. Okay. That's just the clarification I was seeking for. Okay. If you're done, then maybe I can have the appellant speak. Are you done? Okay. Thank you, Susan. Do we have the appellant, Cherise?
Yes, we're gonna have 4 people that are speaking. The first one right now is Derek Shamble. Go
Derek,
ahead, you
go
should be
ahead.
able to speak.
Mhm.
I'm happy to defer to Elizabeth Strutzel, who I believe has a presentation.
Okay. Okay, we'll go to Beth first, just a moment. Beth, can you unmute yourself, please?
Right now, okay, I'm
Yes,
unmuted.
yes,
Thank you.
there you go. Okay,
Okay, thank you. Yes, I am president of the HOA that owns the building and the significant tree that we're discussing today. And I want to thank you for providing us with the opportunity to present our request for the permits for the tree removal and planting, which were submitted on June 6th and which have been denied. The permits that we submitted were based on a report that we had done by Bartlett Tree Experts, which was dated April 4th and based on a site visit on March 22nd of 2022. And this provided what I understand to be a level 2 basic arborist report and a level 3 advanced tree risk assessment report of these 2 cypress trees, one a city tree and one a significant tree. And I might note that a copy of this report was submitted to the Urban Forestry, and obviously they have read it and considered it in their comments today. However, the owners are concerned about the potential for both personal injury and or property damage, which could occur as a result of a failure of the trunk or roots of either or both trees caused by the internal decay which was detected. Photos which are in the report and Susan presented show the tree canopy spreading over the 4-story Alvarado Street property roof, significantly exceeding the height of the property, and their proximity to the busy Castro Street, pedestrian sidewalk on Alvarado Street, and cars parked on Alvarado Street. The implication of this being that the potential for danger is high since they are very large and very close to significant assets. Even if just a failed portion of the tree, such as a large branch which suddenly detached from the trunk, would have a likelihood of hitting a person or property. And the owner's concern is based on the following assessments in the report. The report gives the overall risk rating of both trees as moderate. However, quoting from the report, it states the likelihood of failure for trunk or roots of each Monterey cypress tree assessed was possible over the 3-year assessment period. Again, continuing to quote from the report, based on my assessments, there are 2 options for managing the trees and associated risk. 1, remove the trees, and then he provides some detail on that. The second is retain the trees and their moderate risk rating with the following recommendations. Install, and this then primarily, the primary recommendation relates to the city tree. Install an additional steel support cable within the crown of the city tree to help support the weak attachment between primary codominant stems.
30 seconds.
Additionally, monitor the trees for changes in health and structure annually, which is significantly more frequent than the current city schedule, and after major storm events, which would make it even more frequent. Acknowledge that the current amount of decay will undoubtedly become larger over time with a resulting increase in the likelihood of failure. Site observations noted in the report are as follows. Significant targets within striking distance of tree canopies include people within and around buildings, streets and vehicles, frequent occupancy, buildings and overhead utilities, constant occupancy, and vehicles, frequent occupancy.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you for your review and attention to our permit requests. And there are 3 of the other co-owners that are on the call, and they have the opportunity to add their comments to
Thank you.
these that I have made. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cherise, who is next?
We have Derek Shamble. Go ahead, you should be able to speak.
Okay. I've unmuted. I would just like to start by saying that I formerly was a member of staff at the California Coastal Commission, and so I understand the importance of the urban forest and canopy generally. I would just like to note that it brings, if I may speak on behalf of the other three co-owners as well, it brings us no pleasure to ask for the removal of these trees. However, we believe that it is in the public interest in terms of health, safety, and welfare of not only our building, but also just members of the public, which includes people who may park on the curb or be walking by, that these trees are quickly becoming a hazard. And I would also like to note that we wish to replace them as quickly as possible with an acceptable alternative, if you will. And so while the city inspector found that likelihood of failure is possible but not likely, our risk assessment has been that it would be better to replace sooner rather than later. And again, brings me no pleasure to say that we want to remove two lovely, mature Monterey cypresses from the city and county of San Francisco. But at this point, it seems that this is the prudent option. And I will conclude my comments there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have two more people. Cherise?
We do, she gave me the names of two others, but I don't see their, oh, okay, I do see the hand. Bryce Anderson, go ahead, you should be able to speak.
Yes, thank you all so much for giving us the time to present, and I will keep my comments, excuse me, relatively brief so as not to be redundant. I support everything that Beth and Derek said as well, and I think our primary concern is just the safety of people who are walking or driving by on the street, and I also just sort of the ability for the city to continue to maintain that tree in the way that those reports lined out, and that's certainly not intended to be a knock on you all in any way. I know you have a very difficult task and lots of trees and various interests to manage, but that's the removal is kind of just what I think the four of us thought would be most prudent from a safety perspective. So thank you for letting us present.
Thank you. And the fourth person?
I don't see their hand, so I don't want to call them out.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. So if there are no more public comments, this hearing order number 206855 is now
Well,
closed.
we haven't heard from the public yet. Those
Okay,
were-
sorry,
I mean-
public comments. I thought, yeah, I'm sorry. So this were the applicants. Sorry about that. Can we have public comments? Are there public comments on this?
Yes, there are.
Okay.
Josh, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, in the 7 years I've been attending these hearings, I've probably heard 4 members of the public talk about being afraid of tree failures or calling trees a hazard. One quick note is that the Public Works Code Article 16 actually has a definition of a hazard tree, and this tree doesn't meet it. In any event, fear is not a reason to remove trees. And if we were to use fear as a criteria for removing things from our environment, there'd be a much longer list of things that we need to take out from around our persons and property. Relevant information here is that, yes, as the department mentioned, we have the smallest canopy of any major city in the United States. We had an urban forest plan in 2014 to plant 50,000 more trees. We have failed wildly at implementing that plan. A report from the Budget and Legislative Analyst Office last summer indicated our canopy is shrinking, not growing. And on top of that, this past year, our Board of Supervisors approved a budget that includes $0 for planting new street trees. I would wish that as many people who showed up to support these removals would also show up to support planting and funding, because if they did, then our city would be probably in a different position. In any event, I want to kind of cut to the chase here. These are native trees, which means that in terms of our climate crisis, they are especially beneficial. These are also large, mature trees, which is pretty unusual within the footprint of the city. These native, large, mature, healthy trees support a ton of ecosystems. So we're not just taking out trees, we're taking out a lot of an ecosystem and environmental benefit. And in terms of maintenance and risk, again, the city is responsible for the street tree, and it has already assessed for itself that it is willing to take on that risk. And not to mention that even the private arborist report indicates there are alternatives to removal. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh. Are there any other public comments?
Yes, we have John Nolte.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Good morning. Yes, I feel that these two native Monterey cypress trees should remain. There was a thorough discussion on both sides discussing the pros and cons of the trees. And obviously the city has stated that the trees are in fairly good condition, and therefore that at this time are not considered a hazard, therefore they should stay. Also, since they are native trees, that only adds to the ecosystem of San Francisco and also with the Castro, since this is in the Castro district. And again, center of town. So again, we should maintain these trees, and I agree with this Bluff's recommendations to maintain these trees as is, and hopefully they stay for a long time in San Francisco. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comments? Okay. As you know, if you have additional testimony, you can send it to the email address that is in the chat. In the absence of any more public comments, I would like to close this order number and move to the next one, which is hearing order number 206856. And this is to consider removal of 8 street trees with replacement and removal without replacement of 4 significant trees on private property. So this was approved by staff, but we have some protests. So go ahead, Susan, if you could present. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so I'm going to start with the significant trees first that we approved, and then go with the street trees. So it's 4 significant trees without replacement, but they'll be paying in lieu fees, and 8 street trees with replacement. And we approved these trees for removal, and the public has protested. So I'm sorry, it says -20, but the tree is 20 feet in height. So it's a significant tree. This is on the 29th Avenue frontage. It's a podocarpus. It is healthy. It pains us to approve these. However, this entire building is going to be demolished and built out to the lot line. And since this is a significant tree in the footprint of a new building on private property that's going to be completely demolished and rebuilt, we cannot save this tree. So because it's within the footprint of construction and there's no other place to replant it because this site is fully planted, we are going to assess in lieu fee. The building is going to be affordable housing, so they have to build all the way out to the lot line to maximize the space. The applicant can speak to this, but I believe that's possibly required by the mayor's office of affordable housing. I'm not sure. I'll let the applicant speak to the building. But so again, like, because the demolition is going to happen at the lot line, this is the second and third significant trees up against the building. These look like shrubs, but they're trees. They have bases that are at least 12 inches in diameter. You just can't see them. We had to approve these second and third significant trees because the demolition of this building here at the base would destabilize the roots, and also the building is going to be built out to the lot line. And then this is the fourth significant tree. Again, the building is going to be built out to the lot line, and the demolition of this building on the left here is going to destabilize the roots of these significant trees. So again, these are on private property, and they're in the footprint of the building, and the building is being built out to the lot. So then we have 8 street trees. This is in Irving. It's a pretty tough area to grow trees. It's a combination of anti-tree sentiment in the Sunset in general, and also just windiness and salt. So this is a Tristania lorena on the 29th Avenue frontage. It was planted by the the Irving Streetscape. I believe that was back in 2017 or 2016. It just never established. So you can see that it's dying. So the project is going to replace and replant a tree probably larger than this, and the tree is just dying. So it doesn't even meet our criteria for retention. Even if there's no project, we'd probably end up just removing this tree anyway because it's dead. This is a cherry tree. We were a little more on the fence about approving this, although we did approve it because a new tree would be a similar size. Cherry trees are short-lived. We had a pretty cold winter, so this tree had benefited from the cold snap, but usually cherry trees have a pretty small canopy. So we did approve this tree because it could be replaced in kind. I know we said 24-inch box, but we'll probably go off caliper for that, and so they may actually end up being the same size as these trees. And then cherry trees just don't grow into large stature trees, so it's taken years for this tree to even get to the size, about 7 years, and it's just slow growing. So a new tree would basically, we think, meet the same benefits in a faster time frame. There is a tree around the corner. I'm sorry, I didn't show the picture. There's a large Brisbane box to the left of this tree, and the project is retaining it because it's a healthy tree, and they don't need to remove it. They can work around it because it's at the curb. So this is a bottle brush on Irving. It's in very poor condition. It's windswept. It's also been here for about 5 to 6 years, and just it established and then it's starting to decline. With the new building that's occupied, whereas this building is not occupied, we hope that the replacement trees would be better off and better suited to the microclimate. Sorry, going backwards. This is another bottle brush. It's also in decline. It doesn't have very much new growth, and it's basically been the same size for a few years. So the project is just going to remove and replace. This tree is larger. However, it's also starting to decline a little bit, and then it's been hit a lot on this side by vehicles parking here. So half the canopy is just started to die. So we're looking for the tree to be replaced here as well. And again, this is just a removal and replacement. And then these are 3 Mediterranean fan palms, and they also have looked the same for about those 6 years. They kind of oscillate between looking okay and poor, and a lot of these on Irving have died because people think because their palms are suited to the Sunset, but Mediterranean fan palms like a lot warmer climate. And so because these are just in poor condition, the project is seeking to remove them. The project could possibly fertilize and water, but I'm not sure it'd bring these trees back. Actually, there's a water bag here because we tried to water them to bring them back, and they continue to decline. You can see that frond, the tips of the fronds have declined. There isn't like a new frond at the top, so the trees do demonstrate some kind of decline here. And this is the last tree. So we approved the street trees for removal because they're all generally in poor condition. And also these palms are going to be replaced by a tree. Like I mentioned, palms are grasses. And so a replacement tree would, we hope, provide far more canopy benefits than these palms. It would take about 3 or maybe 5 of a Mediterranean fan palm to equal like 1 Brisbane box, maybe 6. So that's kind of how we equate the canopy benefits of a palm. We're more sad about approving the significant trees, but we cannot retain them with the way the building has been approved and designed. And that design is set in stone. It's gone through planning twice, and it's now approved. So we approved all the street trees because of the poor condition, and the significant trees because they're in the footprint of the building. And that concludes 2550 Irving for the Bureau of Urban Forestry.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. So do we, and says the public has protested. Do we have the appellants on this?
Yes,
Okay,
we have Doreen Silk first, and then Hermandeep Kaur.
okay.
Go
Please
ahead,
have the-
Doreen.
I'm unmuting now.
Yes,
And
we
I
can hear you.
appreciate you're taking the time to listen to what we have to say from the neighbors who live in the neighborhood. It is 26th Avenue for correction, not 29th. Firstly,
Sorry about that.
and that's okay. And apparently we got a notice from the new owners that they had planned to destroy all the trees on the sidewalk of their property. But that we have no objection to because they're attached to the building. So if they take the building down, they'd have to take the trees down. But the city trees, those palm trees, just FYI, have been there 50 years. And actually Gavin Newsom even planted one of the trees. And they are not sickly because they're old. They're sickly because for the last 5 years, when the city permitted the city to take over and Bartlett got a contract, they never watered the trees. We go out all the time with water baskets and buckets. The only reason there are green bags there with water is because someone a week ago, because I have it on my phone, came out to put them there, but they have not been there for the last 5 years. So most of these trees are okay and will come back. I do agree there's one that has to come out, but I was in process of stopping the removal of trees on Irving because when the city decided to come out, they took healthy trees out and replaced them with some of these little bitty ones that are not doing very well. So I think under consideration, they also, the owner of the building, which is for affordable housing, is great, but they have not gotten the permit for their parking lot yet, which is where there is only one sickly tree. Therefore, I think they need to wait until they decide where the parking lot is going, because the planning is not set in stone. So there is room for wiggle here. And the unfortunate part is our president is out of the country and has given me a proposal she'd like to comment upon. And I have included that in what I have asked for. But I think they need to reconsider, since you say that you want to keep the trees. If you look down our block of 26th, you will notice how healthy those trees are that were planted by us with the Department of Urban Forestry, and they're still doing fine. So we do take care of the trees, unlike the city's promise when I called for trimming my tree, which by the way is by a PG&E pole. They told me it would be 3 or 4 more years before they could get out there. So if that's your idea of maintenance,
30 seconds.
That's all I have to say, and I hope you will consider this as a comment in the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person.
Hermandeep Kaur.
Go ahead,
Hello,
Herman.
can everyone hear me?
Yes,
I have a few slides that I'd like to share if I could present them.
Okay, just a moment. I will promote you to panelist, and that at that time you'll need to unmute again, and then you'll
Okay.
be able to share.
And you have 3 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, you'll need to unmute, and then you will have 3 minutes to make your presentation.
Okay. Okay, so you all should be seeing a few renderings of 2550 Irving.
Yes.
My name is Herman Deep. I'm a project manager with the Tenderloin Neighborhood Development Corporation, or TNDC. We're the developer of the 2550 Irving site. We're a nonprofit organization. We build affordable homes and provide property management as well as on-site social services for our residents. We're proposing to build 90 affordable homes for families at 2550 Irving. At least 50% of the units will be 2 and 3 bedrooms. 22 units will be set aside for households experiencing homelessness and will be referred through the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing. 15 units will be set aside for veterans who will be referred through the San Francisco Housing Authority. 1 unit will be designated for an on-site property manager, and the remaining 52 units are general population available through the lottery. The development will be serving households between 25 and 80% area median income based on AMIs published by the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development, or MOHCD. And as Susan alluded to earlier, it's TNDC and MOHCD's goal to maximize affordable housing, as there's a deep need for it, while balancing feasibility, project requirements, and responding to community feedback to provide parking and a meeting room on the ground floor. TNDC has been working with Piatok Architects and Miller Company Landscape Architects to design a building and landscape plan that complements the surrounding neighborhood and provides urban greening and a healthy environment for our residents and neighbors. This is a wonderful opportunity for us to provide affordable housing for San Francisco's low-income residents in a neighborhood with great amenities such as the N. Judah, Golden Gate Park, and the Sunset Branch Library, among others. The project team is excited to coordinate with the newly formed Sunset Chinese Cultural District on possible community-based programming and other community-serving opportunities. The development will also have a public art component that will be a community-informed process aimed at placemaking and honoring the Sunset's cultural history.
30 seconds.
TNDC also does work around individual and community health with urban gardens and wellness programs throughout our properties, and we're looking forward to expand those services into the Sunset neighborhood. I have a few renderings of the building that we'd like to share with you. The first is a view along Irving Street near the entry of the building with seating to foster gathering. And the next couple of views are from 27th Avenue and Irving Street intersection, highlighting the exterior building and streetscape.
Thank you.
And this is the final rendering and concludes what I had for you all today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any public comments on this?
There was another hand that I'm
Oh,
not, I don't
Is
think,
that the appellate, okay, public comment?
I believe so.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Deborah
Did-
Murphy?
I see a
Yes.
couple of hands up.
Can you hear me?
Josh and Maya. Yes.
Well, I live half a block from these trees. I walk by them every morning on my morning walk. And I don't see why these current trees, if they're cared for and watered, can't stay. Why do these trees have to die? Now, regarding this building that's going up, there is some litigation going on. It isn't a done deal yet, but whether that building gets built or not, those trees that are on Irving Street between 26th and 27th, they're on public property. I think they should stay as they are. There's no need to tear down these trees and then put in new ones. If the building gets built, they have plenty of access. If you go to the 27th side, there's no trees there. So they can do whatever they want, demolish the building, take down the trees that are on their private property. But those trees that are on Irving Street between 26th and 27th are on public property and should be maintained and remain. There's no need for them to die.
Okay. Is
And
that it?
That's it.
Thank you. Public comments?
And we had Maya
don't-
Nagasaka. I believe that Maya was a part of the this project, if I'm not mistaken. Can you hear me? Can you unmute yourself?
Yes. Hi.
Okay.
Hi, Cerise. Yes, this is Maya Nagasaka from Miller Company Landscape Architects. I'd like to share our plans if we can. I also have sent it to you as well. So either way. will
Yes,
work.
and everything has been sent to the officer too, but just one moment, okay?
Okay. It's a plan with some plant images. Oh, okay.
And you'll need to unmute yourself one more time.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. Hello. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Maya Nagasaka from Miller Company Landscape Architects, and we've been working with TNDC and the Polytalk Architects. I just wanted to present briefly of our proposed street planting plan for this project. And as Inspector Susan has mentioned that earlier, that some of the existing trees are in poor conditions that have been wind stricken or has not adapted well to the climate in this area. So we are proposing trees that are climate adaptable in this area. For Irving Street sidewalk, we are currently proposing Lossaman Confertus Brisbane box trees, which is an evergreen tree and grows relatively fast to 30 to 40 feet, and is a sun-loving, drought-tolerant tree. It has long, glossy leaves with attractive reddish-brown barks and is a very reliable street tree that provides shade and doesn't uplift the sidewalk. In the case that if we do keep the underground, the overhead utility lines, then we may go with the similar tree, which is Tristania laurina. Those are the trees that will remain in this project and are doing very well. And we may actually plant those trees instead of the Brisbane box. This is sort of a current situation that we are discussing within the team. And on 27th Street, we currently don't have any trees and are adding 2 trees. We are looking at London plane trees that are deciduous trees that provide shade and is well adapted to the urban conditions. And then we are adding 2 additional southern magnolia trees, an evergreen tree with glossy leaves and white fragrant flowers, and it is drought tolerant. All of the trees, including the existing trees that we are keeping, will have a larger planting area, 3 feet by 6 feet, and it'll allow room for the tree roots, and we can plant plantings under the trees. And we are thinking, these are some of the plants that we are encouraging but are not limited to.
30 seconds.
Thank you. And just for everyone's knowledge, there are also, within our property along the sidewalk, we have a stormwater planter. It's a bioretention planter with small footprints that collects and filters rainwater coming off the roof. And then these plants at the bottom are appropriate for those conditions. Our goal is mainly to create habitats for birds and butterflies, and also creating a pedestrian-friendly, sustainable sidewalk for the community.
Thank
you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. So
Thank you.
Was that public comment on a, that was on a?
No, that was from
was that
the
from the,
landscape.
okay, from the landscape,
Yeah.
okay.
Sorry
No,
about
I was trying to say if it was part of the applicant or appellant.
Yeah.
Now, do we have any more appellants on this, or do we go to public comments?
I don't see any more that are for the appellant. Now
Okay.
it will be only public
Public
left.
comments, thank you.
Mhm, mhm.
So how many hands do we have
Two
for public
hands.
comments? Okay,
Two. Okay.
okay.
Go ahead, Josh. Is the first speaker.
Yeah, thanks. So look at those renderings. I don't know when on earth the trees are expected to be that big on that property in like 50 years or something. It's really misleading to the public that we're shown drawings that show these big, healthy, happy trees that we may or may not ever have at a hearing to move all of the existing trees. I would also note that all of the trees currently there were from a list of approved street trees, just like the ones that the project team now proposes to replant. In fact, some of the trees proposed for replanting are the exact same ones that are on the site right now. So why don't we be realistic here? We have these fairly young, new trees that all look bad off for different reasons, and we think just replacing them is going to fix the problem. Just point out that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. But that's what this is sounding like. Not to mention, I really don't like when we are constantly pitting affordable housing against trees. Seriously, we need both. Also, a few years ago, I objected to another removal just like this, where there were trees up against a building that was being demolished in the south of Market, which incidentally is the only neighborhood that is less canopy than the neighborhood that these trees sit in. And it was the same deal. It was approved through planning, who, by the way, has zero criteria in its process for protecting existing trees. Anyhow, all of those trees were approved for removal. They were taken out years ago, and now that lot's just sitting there. Who knows why? A big demolished lot with zero tree canopy, which is just adding to the local urban heat islands and worsening our city air environment. And we are literally years from anything being replanted there, if ever, while we sit here in a climate emergency. So I'm just going to suggest that, first of all, there should be more consideration for trees in the planning and approval process to begin with, because right now there is zero. And that if after all of that consideration, we still go ahead and approve it for whatever reasons, there needs to be some exigency and some real thought that goes into how we're going to replace and grow what is being taken out. And I'm not hearing any of that in this particular matter, but that's my comment.
Thank you. Cherise, do we have an additional public comment?
Yes, we have one more from Mr. Nolte.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Nolte.
Good morning. I have a couple statements to make here. One, part of planning, when you're doing a new building, you're supposed to plant a tree every 20 feet. And I don't see that actually happening in the rendering that was just presented by the landscape architect. Secondly, street trees in the Sunset are thriving, and it also shows from the neighbors they are actually watering the trees. So therefore, the neighbors are pitching in to maintain the trees that are there. And I know that there are other examples of other neighborhoods in which the neighbors have pitched in to water trees to maintain them for their neighborhood. So TNDC does not have a track record of maintaining those trees. As a matter of fact, I've had discussions with Buff on different projects of TNDC saying that we have to remove the trees because of the issues around the property. So therefore, sometime 5 years from now, Buff's going to come back and say, well, we got to remove the trees in front of this building. So I don't feel comfortable removing any of the street trees here. And also, since it was discussed that this has gone through planning twice, that Buff or DPW should have been at the table and make sure that these trees were maintained. And also, I have a question about the we're really not doing an equal swap here with the taking out of the significant trees with the landscape that they have proposed. So I question, the equal value here of all the trees, the equation of the trees that are being requested to be removed versus the trees that are being replanted. And also, because of the harsh conditions of the sunset, those trees that are street trees that are there right now have survived for a number of years, and therefore they should remain. I didn't hear that they needed to be removed for the project to proceed. So that is my comments on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments on that hearing order 206856?
No other hands.
Okay. In the absence of any other public comments, that is closed.
Next case is 206858, 55 Francisco Street, and there's a removal of one street tree with replacement. Staff approved and the public has protested. And it's one ficus microcarpa, and you can see that all the canopy is at the top of the tree. The limbs are very overextended, and that is what we call a lever arm, and it is very prone to limb failure. And it has poor structure, included bark. It has lost limbs in the past, which then further exposes the other limbs. Here it says the replacement is a swamp myrtle. We actually talked to the applicant's arborist, David Hillen, and he said that they said Brisbane box, because we also asked them to plant a similar stature tree. So we approved this tree for removal because it has poor structure, it has had past limb failures, it's overextended limbs, which have been line-tailed in the past, have been failing. And so it is a risk to the public here. And we are asking the applicant to replace with a Brisbane box tree, which will grow to be about the same shape and size as this current tree without poor structure. So we approve this tree for removal and replacement. And that concludes our presentation on 55 Francisco.
Oh, thank you. Do we have an appellant on this? Because Susan, I'm not sure how. Do we have an appellant on this? None? Public comments? Go ahead, Mr. Nolte.
Go ahead, Mr. Nolte, you should be able to speak.
You didn't know. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. I didn't see the unmute thing. My point is that prior ficus trees, the first line of defense was to trim the trees. I don't hear that being said here, and I think trimming of the trees would trimming of this tree would suffice the impact that or just what's going on with the tree. So I prefer that the trimming of the tree would be done as you've done with most trees with ficus throughout the city. Majority of them have been trimmed and phased that way in taking care of the issues with the ficus. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we have Mr. Josh. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Just very briefly, since it sounds like the applicant is getting their application approved here and the applicant has agreed to replace, all I'm curious about is what measures are in place to ensure that they actually do this timely and put in the work to ensure that the replacement tree would establish. And the reason I bring that up is because all over this city, trees are planted for various requirements that require or on the promises of private maintenance, and then that doesn't happen and those trees fail. And we have our urban forestry report that comes out every year that says how many trees were planted but we've never actually done a mortality study. And so we have zero idea how many of those trees are actually still living. So even, you know, the department's estimates on our canopy are probably, unfortunately, still a little optimistic because we don't actually even know our mortality rates. But anyway, this is a city asset, so there should be some process in place for ensuring maintenance of that city and public asset. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Any
ahead.
other public comments?
there are no other hands.
Okay, so that is closed. Susan, the last one.
So one street tree with replacement at 2155, 2157 Jackson Street. Staff approved the removal and the public has protested. We probably wouldn't approve this tree normally. It is a ficus, but it has a lot of like lower canopy and it's small. So it's very low likelihood of failure. The limbs are small. It does have included bark, but we think that a ficus like this could be maintained. However, it is sitting right on top of, there's the structure here. It is actually pretty poor structure, but again, it's really small. So I would probably personally try to save it, except for it's sitting right on top of this tank, underground tank. Before we had indoor heating or normal sort of heating, central heating, people used to have to burn oil way back in the day, and all these underground oil tanks are sitting in the ground and people forgot about them and they planted trees on top of them, but they are a biohazard issue, or actually they're chemical hazard, and so the Bureau of Street mapping requires that they all get removed because they leak and get into the groundwater and they're toxic. So we are kind of mandated to approve trees that are sitting underneath on top of these underground storage tanks because they're essentially considered an environmental hazard. The good news is once this tank is gone, there is room for a replacement tree. So we had to approve the removal of this tree. The tank is right under. There's just no way to get the tank out without removing the tree. So we approved the removal of this tree and with replacement. And we'll be making sure that the applicant understands the replacement requirements here. And that concludes the case for 2155 Jackson Street.
Okay, thank you. And we have Nina Hadvani. Are you the applicant? Can you
Yes.
unmute yourself? There you go.
Yes, can you hear me? I just briefly wanted to say that we love street trees. We've probably planted 20 over the years. We nurture them, we water them, we do all the things that people have been talking about in this hearing. We're huge fans of any kind of street trees, particularly a healthy, mature one like this. It's extremely unfortunate. We purchased the building, did the usual underground storage tank inspection, found a tank, and not only is it right under the tree, but more importantly, it's leaked. It's leaked rather toxic diesel fuel. It's 3,000 parts per million. Safe would be 200. This is 3,000. It's leaked from both ends. If there's a puddle underneath the tank, this is not a good situation. It's highly likely to go into the groundwater. It needs to be removed and remediated. And we've worked with Golden Gate Tank Removal, who are the experts on this, and there is no way that they can get at the toxicity without removing the tank and hence the tree. So we're absolutely committed to replacing the tree with as large a tree as we can find. Whatever your guidelines are, we're happy to exceed them. We want a tree back as soon as possible. We will nurture it once it's planted. It's again, very unfortunate. It's a lovely tree.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other
public comments? Do we have any other public comments?
Yes, we do. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the applicant for her care here, for her concern, and also thank all the departmental staff for their work here today. That's all.
Thank you very much. And then we have Mr. Nolte.
Hi. I noticed that am
Mr.
I
Nolte, I
speaking?
apologize. I'm sorry. Hold on just a
That's
moment.
okay.
Can you
That's
start
okay.
again? Go ahead.
Sure. I noticed on Buff removal site about a month or two ago when this item was on it, that there were multiple tanks being removed all of a sudden because I've seen those for a number of years and I never seen a tank being removed. Although I know of others in the city being removed because of a tree was on top of it. So I'm questioning now why all of a sudden all these and from the same entity are these permits being processed by DPW for tanks to be removed under that have been there at the turn of the century when we were using fossil oil to light up the for the house, for the building that was adjacent to it. So these are all over the city, and now all of a sudden, this year they're being removed. When all this information about removal of the tanks have been on the books for years, and why all of a sudden we have so many throughout the city being now removed? So I'm questioning how come these items are now being processed in this way when there weren't any before for at least the last 5 years. So that's my concern is that, and also I applaud that the property owner will replace this tree with a significant bigger tree or significant, say 36-inch. I think that should be put into the record, a 36-inch box tree on the properties after the tank is removed. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Nolte. Are there any other persons who would like to speak regarding this item? No others. If you do have any further comment, we ask that you would send it to us in writing to our inbox, and that address is Urban Forestry at sfdpw.org, and it has been noted in the chat. So the hearing officer will take the comments that were spoken today and make her recommendations to the director, and then the director will make the final decisions, and we will notify you by mail of these decisions. So thank you all for attending, and this hearing is now closed. Thank you.